Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people. Strong people create great times. What I want people to get is, you got to know where you are in your life and where you are in history, and you got to learn to take advantage of it. You can't complain that it's winter. During winter, if you start a business in winter and you succeed, 60% of all the Fortune 1000 companies that are alive today, the biggest, most successful companies, could have been born in any one of those 4 seasons. They were all born in winter.
Wow.
In a recession or depression.
Gotta love it.
From FedEx to Disney. Disney was depression.
Yeah.
FedEx was
Right.
a recession. I can walk you through them all. So that process makes you strong. And what changed my life was finding that part that's inside of all of us that will not give up. You know, I'm proud to be a good human being. I believe I'm a good human being, but I think hunger often comes, not always, often comes from having gone through enough pain. Like, I've suffered enough. I don't want somebody else to suffer. Anger only gets you so far. It's the fuel that burns out very quickly. Now let's take a second one. Do you tend to focus more? I'm sure I know what the answer on this one is. More on what you can or can't control. There's 3 decisions we make every moment of our life. The first decision we're making is, what are we going to focus on? Right now, there's millions of things we could focus on. People listening could be focused on what they're doing, what we're saying, whether it matters or not, a million things, right? But we only focus on a small band of things, and whatever we focus on, we experience in life. But then the second decision you make as soon as you focus on something is you give it a meaning. Is this the end or the beginning? If you think it's the end of a relationship, you're going to behave very different than the beginning. Is this person dissing me? Are they challenging me? Are they coaching me? Or are they actually loving me? Whatever meaning you create produces emotion, and those emotions control your third decision, which is, what are you going to do? We don't experience life. We experience life we focus on. But once we understood seasons, we knew if you do the right thing at the wrong time, there is zero reward. But if you do the right thing at the right time, the rewards are immense. So if you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work, or the summer, you get nothing. It's like recognizing the seasons changed humanity. Well, there's a season in your own life. Some of your viewers are younger, maybe 0 to 21. Think of that as springtime. When it's springtime, what does spring have? Everything grows easily. If it's a springtime in business, you think you're a genius because your business grows. Everybody's business grows because it's a time of tremendous optimism and immense growth. The environment's different, people's attitudes are different. But these cycles go through 18, 20-year cycles. If you study 1,000 years of Roman history, which I've done, or 500 years of Anglo-American history, you see about every 18 to 20 years, there's a shift. It's kind of like we exhaust an emotion. Do you ever smile so much your face hurt?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you need a change.
Sure.
Well, after springtime, the easy time, comes a summertime. And the summer is always a testing time. It's tougher. A lot of people plant in the spring and they go, where's my crop? Are you new? You have to get through all the seasons, right? So summer tests people. And then you go to another reaping time. You go to the fall where it's easy again, where now things flow. Economies go crazy. People want to give you a mortgage even though you barely have a pulse and not a job. You remember those days,
Of course, right? No income, no assets.
And boom, just give it to anyway. And markets go through the roof. But again, what follows that is winter. And the great thing about life is you never skip from the fall to spring. You always go through winter. Some are short, some are long, some are hard, some are easy. But we go through them. They have a purpose. They weed out the weak. They make us, if we push through it, stronger. They make everything better going forward. So there's a purpose in every season. What happened to that kid born in 1910 and 1929 when he's 19 thinking he's going to go get a car and he's going to go get a party? The whole world turned upside down. The Depression, people jumping out of buildings, the Dust Bowl, people standing in line for bread. And by the way, they made it through 10 years of depression. Now, that doesn't mean every day is dark. You can be in winter and have beautiful days. 31, 32 were nice times. But the overall thing was testing, and they became strong because they had to be. Then right when they turned 29, 1939, what happens? World War II. You and I weren't alive then, but anybody who was alive then, it looked like the world was ending. Hitler was taking over countries in days, blitzkrieging everywhere. And so what happened is that generation volunteered and went to war, and they won the war, and they came back the heroes. They're now known as the greatest American generation, and they were known as flappers and losers. What made them strong was pushing through winter. Everybody, listen to me now, everybody goes through winter if they live 80 years plus.
You don't have a choice.
If you look at the history of the world, good times create weak people. They're not bad people, they just have never been challenged. And I had these experiences that challenged me so strongly, and I met the challenge, and it changed my sense of identity about who I was and what I was capable of. And then I couldn't help but spread that. And I slept on the hill one night, it was raining, and then the Next day, I was like, I can't stay in the rain. I went to this girlfriend's house, and they let me stay in their little, washing machine room. And then I took the little money I had, and I took these buses, and I bought a book. I went to Claremont, California. It was about 15 miles away. And I bought this book at this bookstore called The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. And it talked about how to program your mind. And I was writing on the mirror in the laundry room all my goals, and I made these posters that only a idiot gets depressed, only a loser gets depressed. It's not true, but that was my way of leveraging myself, right? And I started to make these changes, and then I tried to go to work for Jim Rohn, and it was Christmas, so I had to keep working as a janitor. And what changed my life was finding that part that's inside of all of us that will not give up. I was so driven. It was a way of finding love with my father was by becoming better. And I also had huge drive because I just wanted to be more. I didn't want to settle. I looked at our family and all the pain that I saw my mother go through and we would go through, and I was like, I'm not going to have a future like that. I'm going to find some way to do more. So it produced drive. So even when I was in sports, I was so competitive in junior high school that I was a little guy, but I played linebacker and quarterback. And during practice, guys would complain because I'd stick them so hard. And I'd say, get strong. I'm half your size, but you get low, you can take anybody out, right? So I had this intensity in that level. We don't experience life. We experience life we focus on. Meaning what's wrong is always available, so it's what's right. Whatever you focus on, you feel, even if it's not true. If you imagine something horrible is going to happen, you feel it. You're in your body, right? So focus equals feeling. Focus equals reality to the individual. Even though it's a reality in actuality. We decide, every moment we're deciding what to focus on, but most of us don't decide consciously. It's based on habit. So we're not in control. But we can consciously choose what to focus on. When we decide what to focus on, our brain has to come up with a meaning, like we said, the end or the beginning, loving me or dissing me, whatever the case may be. And that affects your emotions, which decides the third decision, what am I going to do? Let's start with focus. Let's take 3 patterns of focus for your audience. If I asked you, and I think I know with you, it would be pretty simple, but which of these do you tend to spend more time in? Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what's missing?
What's missing?
That's right. And when I ask most audiences that I have 20,000 people in the stadium, the majority of them are achievers, and the majority of them focus on what's missing. Now, since during COVID, almost everybody was focused on what's missing because many things were taken from them. So now I want you to think about this. If you constantly focus on what's missing, it'll make you keep pushing, but it's very hard to sustain deep levels of happiness because you're all focused on what's missing. And so you're an overachiever, so you can still stack those enough to still feel good. But for most people, they go, what's missing? I'm missing the love of my life. I'm missing this, I'm missing that. That puts them in a state of frustration, anger, sadness, or ultimately depression. That period of time, by the way, 22 to 42, if people are in that stage of life right now, it's statistically the most unhappy period. Because people are trying, they thought it was going to be easy. It's not so easy, they eventually learn, usually in their 30s. Yeah, and then what they learned is, well, not as easy as I thought, I'm not as invincible as I thought, and they have to figure things out, and they're trying to prove themselves to themselves and others. They haven't figured it all out yet. Now, some people do these seasons earlier, some later, but it's a good range. In that power period, that's when you have greatest economic growth. That's when you start having long-term relationships. But the ultimate time, and I say to you this as a brother who's heading in that direction, because I never would have believed it, is really when you get to 63 to 83 or 63 to 103 or 63 to 120, which is the oldest humans, the final season, the winter season. But that's the season in which you really are the elder of society. And if you've done your job up front, you've reaped so much, all you want to do is give back. And you don't worry about what people think about you. It's all patterns, as you know, Patrick. Like, if anyone listening wants to say, okay, the world seems uncertain. And yeah, I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids. So I have a 50-year-old daughter and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, because 3 of my kids I adopted early on when I was just 24, 25 years old. And so I look at my grandkids, especially, and my youngest daughter, and I think 40% of the jobs, if you believe the studies, are going to be gone because of AI, because of robotics, because of nanotechnology and so forth. So how do I arm them to do well in the future? And the answer is there's 3 skills everybody needs, and they're so simple. And they're the skills that make anybody masterful. It's made you successful in your insurance business. It's what's made you successful in this business. The first thing is pattern recognition. If you start recognizing patterns, fear disappears. Because like right now, people say, oh, we've never been so divided, or now we're, the country has no more optimism, but we've never been so divided. That's total BS. I can show you the letters that are put out that were posted between Jefferson and Adams. And if you read what they wrote, it makes anything the left or right has said about each other look calm compared to that. So it's like we go in cycles. So when you recognize a pattern, you no longer react. It's like losers react, leaders anticipate. Anticipation is power. So when you know the pattern, and that's what makes anybody great, they see the pattern. But what makes them really great is the second skill, when you learn to use the patterns. So if you and I look at anybody, you see somebody that's great in investing. I've interviewed more than 50 of the very best in the world. The Ray Dalias, the Carl Icahns, the Warren Buffetts, all the best in private equity. And what you begin to see is there are certain patterns, even though they go about it differently, that are universal. If you sow the same seeds, you reap the same rewards, but they know how to use it. If you see somebody great in music or dance or a movie maker, they know where to move the camera, to move your emotion. They bring it in close, when to bring the music up, how to do it. They know it. That makes them masterful. But the third level skill is pattern creation. That's what you've begun to do. That's what I've begun to do. It's like when you learn to play a piano, most people learn someone else's patterns. You learn to see the patterns, recognize them, then you learn to use them. But if you do enough other music, then now you get to come out and you start creating things. So I'm standing on the shoulders of all the people before me, as are you, because I learned so many things from them. But now at this stage of my life, the last 15, 20 years, I've been able to create things because I know what those patterns are. So those skill sets, that's how my kids will do well. Because if you can learn rapidly and recognize patterns, there's nothing you can't do well at. And that's really, by the way, noting the patterns of where we are in history, the pattern of where you are in your own life. I'll give you a simple example. What made human beings go from survival, living in fear, where we're hunter-gatherers, to where we could stay in one place, build communities, build cities, build countries, have homes, have the education? What made that possible was one pattern recognition that changed humanity. Seasons. Until we understood seasons, we had to constantly move from place to place and hope we could find our food. But once we understood seasons, we knew if you do the right thing at the wrong time, there is zero reward. But if you do the right thing at the right time, the rewards are immense.